Hello there, peoples, and I know it's been a few days since we've had anything happen on the channel, had some stuff going on that caused me to not be able to work on anything, and it wasn't anything bad, it was just some stuff that I've been looking forward to as of late, but forget all of that, we're back, we're looking at all the reveals that happened between Gencon and yesterday, as a matter of fact, and there is a lot of stuff to cover, so let's just dive right into it, starting off with X-Wing Wave 6's announcement. So we're getting a lot of stuff here. 2 new ships, 6 reprints, and we'll start off going down the list with Major Von Reg's TIE, which is the First Order TIE Interceptor. And right off the bat, I'm kind of a bit of a spoiler, but this is easily my favorite thing out of the wave. Not because I'm a bit of an Imperial and First Order fanboy, but just because it fills something that the First Order really hasn't had, and that is a mid-range interceptor that is able to chase after opponents. And when I say mid-range, I mean mid-range in points likely, because the silencer can do the same thing, but it's pretty expensive once you start getting into upgrade territory and stuff like that, and even without upgrades. So this will hopefully fill a midpoint between the TIE FO and the TIE silencer. And so far, it's actually looking like a pretty decent expansion. We've got a copy of concussion missiles. We have these new mag pulse warheads that are 3-die attack at range 1 to 3. You have to have a target lock, and if the attack hits, the defender suffers a crit and then gains a jam token and a deplete token. Now, this is a new thing we're seeing in Wave 6, so we're not sure what it does. My guess is that it's similar to that one crit that reduces your attack value when you're attacking with any sort of weapon by 1. I'm not 100% sure, though. It is a red token, though, so you can just remove it by executing a blue maneuver, but you won't be able to remove multiple of them with Corsella, because she specifically says stress, not deplete or strain or red tokens, and that is one of the ways that this expansion interacts with deplete tokens. We also have this new ship ability on the TIE BA Interceptor, which is what the thing is officially called, and that is fine-tuned thrusters, which reads, after you fully execute a maneuver, if you are not depleted or strained, you may gain 1 deplete or strain token to perform a target lock or barrel roll action. So it's similar to auto thrusters, but instead of gaining a stress to do a booster barrel roll, you gain a deplete or strain to do a target lock or barrel roll, excuse me. And the fact that it gives you this option to play to your situation is actually really nice. So if you're not going to be attacked, but you have a really good shot, you take a strain token. If you're not going to be able to shoot, but you absolutely need your agility because you're being chased by a couple of Star Fortresses or something, you take the deplete token. So it at least gives you some options as to what is going to be most beneficial in that situation if you need to do the extra target lock or barrel roll. And FFG did say at their in-flight report at Gencon that this will be a ship relying on the bullseye arc quite frequently. And we can see that in the one pilot we do know, Major Von Reg, who is a pilot skill 6, which I think makes him, only the 3rd pilot skill 6 First Order pilot, which is nice to see that there's another one of them. And his ability reads, during the system phase, you may choose one enemy ship in your bullseye arc. That ship gains 1 deplete or strain token of your choice. So similar to fine-tuned thrusters, except you want to give out the token that will be most hurtful during that. And it's sort of like a reverse Soutinier effect, where a Soutinier gains stuff for himself once he gets an enemy in his bullseye arc. Von Reg is going to be hurting those enemies if they end up in their bullseye arc. And it's actually not going to be too hard to do it with Von Reg, because he's got a pretty decent dial with all blue 1-speed maneuvers except no 1 straight, all the 2-speed basics with white 2 turns as well as 2 sloops, all the basic 3-speed maneuvers with a blue 3 straight, and then a blue 4 straight, white 5 straight, and a 5K turn. So it's a pretty maneuverable ship. Plus, it has barrel roll and boost in addition to focus evade and target lock. So there are a lot of options here. And we do see some other upgrades here. We do have another copy of munitions failsafe, not too exciting. There's these 2 upgrades here. One I'm assuming is an elite pilot talent, and the other is a tech upgrade. I'm not going to say anything too much about them, except this what looks like tradition or something says this side face up, so it's going to be a dual-sided card. And my guess is okay, I'm reading this. It says fewer stress tokens, a focus symbol, actions while stressed. My guess is it's saying while while you have 2 or fewer stress tokens, I'm guessing you can perform focus actions while stressed. And I'm not going to make any guesses about what's down here. So we'll see what happens. And then we actually have a clear shot of the new Snapshot Elite Pilot talent that we saw glimpses of in Wave 5 with the Nantex and the BTL-B Y-Wing. And this is a 2-die attack at range 2. No range bonuses can be applicable, which really the only ship that would have mattered for is the Inquisitor, but he can't even take Snapshot anyway, so that's really not a concern. But you never know, something could come out in the future that can have a range bonus at range 2. We'll see. But it says after an enemy ship executes a maneuver, you may perform this attack as a bonus attack, and your dice cannot be modified while doing the attack. So it's basically just a quick way to get another shot in during the round if somebody moves in close to you. I think the original Wave or First Edition Snapshot was at range 1. So having this at range 2 is actually nice because it just gives you a wider arc of when that it can trigger. And I'm not too sure if it can be triggered multiple times during a turn based off the way the card reads. I'm guessing that's a yes, but if we're following the interpretation of like what it would be like in terms of the game, at least from how I interpret it, it's probably only going to be once per turn, but it could easily go either way. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. One thing we won't have to wait to see if it pans out is the Fireball, because honestly, after looking at this thing and talking with somebody about it, I do not like this at all. Now, Cole, who you'll see in a upcoming battle report I'm editing, hates this thing more than I do. I don't like it just because it seems kind of useless. He hates it because A, it's useless, and B, he thinks this thing isn't suited for combat at all. And after hearing his reasoning for it, it's understandable because it's a racing ship, and it actually is down the 3rd ship to have the slam action, which is nice to see another ship with slam. But the problem is it's extremely vulnerable, whereas the TIE BA Interceptor had a nice stat line, 3 attack, 3 agility, 2 hull, 2 shields. This thing, 2 attack, 2 agility, 6 hull, which may seem nice, except it's more like 5 hull because due to the explosion with wings ability the thing has, it starts the game with a face-down damage card. And there's a secondary effect here that reads, after you perform a slam action, you may expose 1 damage card to remove a disarm token. You're hurting yourself to get rid of disarm tokens. Whoop-de-freaking-do. That is just... You never want to be exposing your own damage cards unless you somehow have a way to perform slam actions while stressed, and you have a panic pilot that you can just cycle through constantly and have a low-risk scenario there. So, not too big of a fan on this. We do get a copy of Magpulse Warheads here, which are definitely going to be a fun missile to mess around with, especially if you're playing it with Merrick, who can just fish out whatever crit he wants, or Kylo, when he can just fish out whatever crit he wants. So that's going to be at least nice. We get Snapshot in here as well. We have this new illicit upgrade, Coaxium Hyperfuel, which reads you can perform the slam action even while stressed. If you do, suffer 1 critical damage unless you expose one of your damage cards. And after you partially execute a maneuver, you may expose one of your damage cards to suffer, or you may expose one of your damage cards or suffer a crit to perform a slam action. So it's an interesting design, but it's encouraging you to take damage, which the whole point of the game is not to take damage, so I really don't like that. For the other upgrades, we have some title, I think, here. I'm not sure what it does, though. R1J5 bucket from the show, and then another copy of Advanced Slam and a copy of Targeting Computer. Overall, this isn't really too exciting. It's probably not going to see a whole lot of play in casual or competitive unless you're really just bored and want to fly the thing and just have an explosion with wings. So that's my opinion on that. Moving into the reprints, which I'm not going to say as much on just because they're reprints, but still some interesting stuff to talk about. Saw's Renegades is seeing a reprint, which is interesting considering FFG said they weren't going to reprint Aces expansions, and the first edition Saw's Renegades was an Ace expansion. But there wasn't really any other way to introduce the Saw's Renegades second edition components into second edition in a card pack or some, or what am I saying? There really wasn't any other way to introduce the second edition Saw's Renegade stuff to newer players without having to buy the first edition expansion. So I'm glad this is coming out, and it shows that FFG might still be willing to do repaints of ships, because honestly, the repainted ships were always a fun thing to buy. So even though it was annoying buying the same ship, it's fun to sometimes like feel different paint jobs and just have a little variety in how your squadron looks. So that's nice. Speaking of first edition expansions that contain second edition components, the TIE Reaper is actually seeing a reprint as well in this wave. And I mean, the Reaper isn't too good of a ship. I mean, a low, like, visor with an attack officer is always something that I found fun. But it's at least nice to give newer players at least an easy way to access the Reaper. I'm not going to say that it's now in hyperspace, because it already was in hyperspace from the beginning of the game. But it's just now a way for newer players to get access to it without having to either borrow it or buy a first edition expansion and have components they can't use. So that's nice. The Houndstooth expansion is coming back, and this is actually slightly different from the original, because it actually now contains a Nashta Pup Z95, which is the reason I was actually avoiding buying a first edition Houndstooth expansion when second edition got announced. So I was hoping this would happen, and it did. And not only that, it comes with a new pilot card, a version of Bosk in the Z95. So you can field this on his own or with the Houndstooth. And he has the same ability as flying the Houndstooth while performing a primary attack. After the neutralize results step, you may spend 1 crit to add 2 hit results, there. And it has, instead of the escape craft ability on the Nashta Pup, it has the pursuit craft ability, which allows you to acquire a lock on the ship that the Houndstooth has locked when you deploy the Z95. So definitely opens up a few more interesting options. And for veteran players wondering how you're going to be able to get this card without buying everything else in this expansion, there is a way. So we'll get to that in a minute. But for now, just know that there is a way to get this without buying all of this. But even though I'm a veteran player, I'm picking one up because I never got a Houndstooth in first edition, like I mentioned. And now that it has the Z95, there's even more of a reason for me to pick this up. And plus, it'll give me a third Z95 to work with my conversion kit. So, hey, it's a win win in every way. So that's nice. And then just a few more miscellaneous ships. TIE Interceptor, Soutinier now. Newer players have access to it. Another copy of Predator and Shield upgrade. Always nice to have. Not too exciting, though. The Defender, it's nice to have it back, but the upgrade suite in this expansion is terrible. I mean, except for advanced sensors. That's pretty good. But if I was choosing the upgrade suite, instead of Elusive, I would have gone with Juke. Instead of Tractor Beam, I would have gone with Ion Cannon. And then instead of Ion Missiles, I would have gone with Cluster Missiles. Just because those upgrades tend to pair more well with the Defender. Either that or swap. And advanced sensors, I mean, could stay, but I'd maybe swap it out for Fire Control System. That really one could really go either way. Either way. So it's also nice having Ryad and Rixler in hyperspace now. So nice expansion there. The upgrades are bad. The pilots are good. That's what I got to say about that. And then the RZ-1 A-Wing. Overall, this expansion is kind of lacking just because the RZ-1 really isn't that good right now. It does come with Juke, though, so that's nice. And I wish that Juke and Elusive would have been swapped between these two expansions. But then again, they probably realized the RZ-1 isn't in too good of a spot right now. So they included Juke in order to make sure that people would still buy it. So, or maybe that's not the reason. Maybe it is. I don't know. Overall, Wave 6 is okay. There's definitely a couple of standouts with the Houndstooth reprint and Major Von Reg's tie. And there's definitely a stinker in here in the Fireball. But overall, it's a pretty solid wave. But this is only the first X-Wing thing we're talking about. So I'm going to cut out quickly and pull up the next piece of X-Wing news we're talking about. Okay, so now we are looking at the new card packs that FFG announced, and this is something we've all been waiting for I think a couple of years now, ever since well, basically since the game started, we wanted card packs, and now we're getting them finally. So looking at the first one, Never Tell Me the Odds. This one is an obstacle pack, so it comes with a bunch of obstacles, 9 asteroids, 3 debris fields, 3 gas clouds, and then these new environment cards that are sort of like scenarios involving special rules with the obstacles. So at least it's a new way to play the game, and this just gives you more obstacles if you want to have more variety for stuff. And hopefully they're different shapes, so that way it just creates more options when you're trying to figure out what obstacles to bring. And on top of that, the expansion also includes a copy of spare parts canisters and a rigged cargo chute, plus the respective tokens. So this card, I mean, it's okay. Actually, both of these are okay if you have like seismic charges around, just because then you can drop an obstacle and then immediately blow it up for cheap damage. So it's nice to have other copies of these, and especially Brig Cargo Shoes, since I think the only expansion it comes in right now is Lando's Falcon, whereas the spare parts canister comes in Guardians of the Republic and the Resistance Transport. So there's that. Fully loaded is a device pack, so it comes with all the devices currently in the game except for the probe droids, since those are Separatist exclusive. But it also marks the return of the cluster mines and ion bombs from first edition. They are coming into second edition now, so definitely excited to see those back, since cluster mines were easily my favorite bomb in first edition. So it's nice to see those, like I just said, and it also comes with a couple copies of Delayed Fuses and Trajectory Simulator, so overall, this is actually a pretty decent expansion, and it's going to be a nice way for newer players to get all the different munitions, or not munitions, devices. So overall, that one's not too bad, and it also comes with some scenario or environment cards, so more ways to play the game. Finally, we have Hotshots Aces, which is a pilot and upgrade pack, so it's two things mixed into one, and there's a lot of stuff in here. We're getting we're getting 2 copies each of Auto Blaster, Passive Sensors, and Plasma Torpedoes, which I think are going to be easily the most sought-after upgrades from Wave 4. We're also getting 2 copies of that new Magpulse Warheads missile that we saw with the TIE BA Interceptor and the Fireball. And then we're getting various new pilots. And before that, I should mention that B-Wings, it looks like they're getting a S-foil configuration called Stabilized S-foils based off this quick build card with the new B-Wing pilot, Gina Moonsong. And speaking of new pilots, we're getting 16 of those, 3 for every faction except for Rebels, who are getting 4. Paige Tico is becoming a Resistance Bomber pilot, so she has the ability, after you drop a device, you may spend a charge to drop an additional device. My guess is that charge is non-recurring, since most... Actually, no, that might be recurring, since you can reload bombs. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. And it's a pilot skill 5, so it's actually not too bad. It would actually be better if it was a lower pilot skill, just because then you'd... Actually, no, it's good at a high pilot skill, because then your opponent can't react as easily to it, especially if you give them initiative. So nice there. Morta Key is now a Decimator pilot. We don't know her ability. We'll have to wait and see. Phasma and Leia are now pilots as well. So Phasma for the TIE SF and Leia for the Falcon, the Rebel Falcon specifically. K2SO is now a U-Wing pilot, which he has the ability, after you gain a stress token, gain a calculate token. I have the card pulled up here. I'm not sure if it showed up on camera or not. If not, I've already thrown an image up there. So, I mean, it's an interesting ability. We'll have to wait and see how he plays out. And then we're getting various new pilots. I'll have a link in the description to the product page for this if you want to see the full list, since I'm not going to go over everything here, just so that way I don't waste your time. But overall, this pack is definitely looking interesting. Definitely looking interesting, I should say. I cannot speak all of a sudden. Easily my favorite things out of this are the 5th brother becoming a TIE Advanced V1 pilot, and then having a way to get more copies of Auto Blaster, Passive Sensors, and Plasma Torpedoes, because, again, those are probably going to be the most sought-after upgrades from Wave 4. And also having this B-Wings S-foil configuration is nice. So that is all of the card packs, but we have one more thing to look at for X-Wing, and that is the new Imperial Raider 2nd Edition expansion. So we knew this was coming. It was teased in the initial huge ship announcement video, but we finally have an image of it, and it's looking pretty interesting. So first off, it has a 180-degree forward firing arc, so it can't shoot out the rear, at least without upgrades. And we have a bit of a product spread here showing various things. Copy of Agile Gunner, the 2 ship cards, this new Bombardment Specialist team, which seems to have an ability similar to Major Rhymer that allows you to increase or decrease the range band of your secondary weapons. So you could increase like Plasma Torpedoes to range 4, which could be fun. But we also see the new Command Crew Admiral Ozzel card, which allows a friendly, larger, huge ship to suffer damage to change their maneuver if they're at range 0 to 3. So, I mean, it's interesting, but like I said with the fireball, you're basically giving yourself damage, and it's not necessarily a good thing to be giving yourself damage. With huge ships, it's less of a problem because I think they're going to have the ability to heal a lot easier. But for large ships, it's not as easy, so probably not a good idea. So, I mean, it's okay for like other huge ships, but for large ships, not too good. We also do see here, we have a full image of the Imperial ship card, and then most of the First Order ship card, but we could assume a couple of things we can't see based off the Imperial ship card. It's a 4-die, 180-degree front-firing arc primary, 0 agility, as huge ships tend to have, 20 hull, 8 shields, which I'm not sure what this double recharge thing means, 6 energy, not sure what that double recharge thing means either. But it's nice to see the energy mechanic is coming back. And for those who don't know, energy was a mechanic from first edition, and it's now returning in second edition, that allows huge ships to, it essentially gives them an extra resource to do different things. In first edition, it allowed you to recover shields. It allowed you to interact with certain upgrade cards. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in this edition. We also have the concentrated batteries effect, which our ship ability, which allows you to roll an additional die if the defender's in your bullseye arc and you're performing a primary attack, a torpedo attack, or a missile attack. And for those of you wondering how it can gain torpedoes or missiles, it's not innately in their upgrade bar, but there's an upgrade called Ordnance Tubes that I think is going to give them the torpedo and missile slot, just because there was a similar upgrade in first edition that did that. And then for the actions, we have Focus, Reinforce, Target Lock, Coordinate, and Jam, all white. And we could assume the First Order version has the same action bar and the same stat line, and we know it has the same ability. So easily, it's supposed to be a powerful huge ship because it is actually the largest of the 5 huge ships. The Tantive 4 is slightly smaller from what I've heard, so definitely it should have a lot of powerful abilities, and 0 agility, that's just something they do to balance out the huge ships. And they're also really slow, so there's that. And then we do have one of the titles revealed, Corvus, which if it's not on screen from the webpage, I'll just throw an image up on screen. But it gives you the calculate action, gives you the advanced droid brain ability, essentially, that allows you, after you perform a calculate action, to gain an extra calculate token. And it allows you to dock a couple of small ships. So you could dock maybe a couple of defenders and then just run up the gut of the enemy, deploy them on the flank, run them behind your enemy squadrons, and just wreak havoc with a defender. So there's definitely some things you could do with that. And overall, the Raider expansion is looking pretty fun. So I'm going to stop here quickly, and we're going to shift gears over to a different game. So I will be right back. Okay, so moving over to Armada, we have 2 new large ship expansions for Wave 8, and one is, I mean, okay, but the other is actually just looks really cool, and I'm definitely going to try and pick one up. So starting off with the Nadiri Starhawk, which is actually pretty significant considering this is the first time we've seen a physical model of this ship. We knew it existed from the Aftermath novels, but we never knew what it looked like. All we knew is that it had a super powerful tractor beam of sorts, and it looked like a hatchet, and this is apparently what it looks like. And a lot of people have been making jokes that it looks like an oversized Nebulon B, but honestly, I don't see a problem with that. The Nebulon B is an iconic ship, and to replicate that necessarily ain't a bad thing. So looking at the contents here, we don't know 6 of the upgrades because there's 15. We're only seeing 9 here. We don't know what the ship cards are like at all. We do know there's this new salvo defense token, which they mentioned allows them to fire back at somebody who attacks them, and it's not going to be something that's exclusive to the Starhawk. The new commander, Krista Agate, however you pronounce that, allows you to gain a non-scattered defense token once you deploy, which that's actually really cool, but the secondary effect doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because it reads, during your spend defense token step, if your speed is not 0, you may discard a defense token to resolve the effect of that defense token. You cannot resolve the effect of each type of defense token more than once per attack. Honestly, I don't understand why that effect exists, just because it basically says, hey, you can do a standard game effect as a commander ability without anything special. Whoop-de-freaking do. Like, I don't understand it. So if you can explain to me why this exists, please do. But for 20 points just to gain a non-scatter defense token, not worth it. So a couple other things we see. We have the 3 titles. We have what looks like the tractor beam array. We have Shriv as a boarding team of sorts. And for those of you who have played Battlefront 2, you'll know who Shriv is. Looks like Wedge might be a new officer, so that's going to be interesting. And yeah, I mean, it's okay. It looks like it's going to be performing the broadsides that Rebel fleets are known for, but we'll have to wait and see what things pan out to. As for the new Onager class Star Destroyer, though, this is interesting, where as the Starhawk looks to be just doing the same thing Rebel fleets are known for, this looks like it's taking the standard Imperial tactic of just point everything forward and hope to God that it will blow up the enemy fleet. This takes that and says, you know what, let's throw an X-Wing style bullseye arc in there, because why not? So this has a giant, like, death beam on it. It's essentially a miniature Death Star mixed with a Star Destroyer, which is kind of cool. And a lot of people don't seem to like the design of this thing. I do, because it looks like a hammerhead shark, and random side note, I love sharks, so the design of this thing kind of just makes me smile. And again, this bullseye arc thing seems interesting. We're getting a lot, 15 upgrades in this expansion as well. There's this new commander, which I can't really read the effect right now, but it has something to do with like obstructed attacks. We also have this new crew upgrade, Commander Beck, which reads, during your activation, you may resolve a command as if you had spent a command token. If you do, gain 1 raid token of the matching type. You may resolve this effect twice per activation. There's a couple ways to interpret this. Either you replace the dial effect with the token effect and then you gain the raid token, or you get the token effect in addition to the dial effect and then get the raid token. So hopefully the second effect is the way to correctly read it, because if it's the first effect, it's really not going to be worth it that much. So overall, this seems cool. We don't know too much right now about these, so I'm not going to say too much, but Starhawk, I mean, it's okay. The Onager class Star Destroyer, though, is definitely going to be interesting. So that's really all we got for Armada, so we're going to shift gears again to another game, so I will be right back. Okay, so now we have the new Legion news that came out, and there was some at Gencon and some just a couple of days ago. Now, in full disclosure, I do not play Legion at the moment. I do want to eventually, but I can't at the moment. So a lot of this stuff, me analyzing, is going to be me looking in as a fanboy, so let's get started, starting with Dooku. I know that Kenobi's in the Clone Wars starter set, so it's nice that the Separatists now have a Force user to counter Kenobi, and a more powerful one at that. But honestly, it just doesn't seem too exciting, considering we've seen like Force users before. So, I mean, it's nice to have, but we'll see how things pan out. Rex, on the other hand, I definitely like, because he was easily one of my favorite characters from the Clone Wars, and just to have him now as a commander option in Legion is going to be a lot of fun, especially since he has this new scouting party keyword, which allows him to give a couple other units scout that are nearby him. So if you have like a couple of units of Phase 1 troopers or the new Phase 2 troopers with Z6 cannons, you can just like march them up a little closer to be able to get them in range quicker. So that's definitely going to be something fun to try out for people who actually play the game, or once I eventually get into the game, hopefully. That's something I'm going to be trying. So, and actually there's a lot of build options in here, because you can build them either with the classic clone head, or you can build them with his Phase 1 or Phase 2 helmet. So this expansion is exciting me a lot more compared to Count Dooku, so that's nice. I mentioned Phase 2 clones are coming, so these guys are probably going to be a little more lightly armored, but have a greater utility compared to Phase 1 clones. They have this new mortar thing that is part of the unit. It's not an attachment like with the Rebel veterans and the shore troopers. They have a Z6 cannon similar to Phase 1, so it's going to be interesting to see how these guys play out compared to Phase 1 troopers. So, yeah, I'm not going to say too much, just because, again, we don't know how they play compared to Phase 1 troopers. I've said that like 5 times now. I'm sorry. Speaking of more advanced troops, we have the B2 battle droids, the super battle droids. And compared to the B1 battle droids, these guys are definitely going to have a more distinct purpose, whereas B1 droids are designed to swarm. These guys are designed to be elite infantry and to just kill everything in sight. It helps that they have a machine gun to deal with other possible infantry swarms, and a rocket launcher of sorts to be able to deal with any sort of like vehicle.
So maybe a couple of units of super battle droids with the rocket launcher dude could be an interesting thing, just to have a nice utility unit to take out either armor or light armor or infantry. So that's probably going to be their use, and it seems like something they're going to be able to perform well. Speaking of armor, we're getting a couple of tanks here, and full-size tanks at that. The Republic is getting this new TX-130 Saber class tank, which is going to seem like seems like it's going to be a light armor choice that is able to move around pretty quickly, especially considering that it has these side notches compared to the previous vehicle bases where it could only move forward and backward. It does have a weak point on the side, but these are going to allow you to sort of like move side to side and get units that are trying to shoot the side in front of you and then just decimate them. And looks like there's going to be some options here for how you kit this thing out. So hopefully it serves that utility tank role nicely. Compared to the ATT or AAT Trade Federation tank, which seems just to be as an artillery piece with these ordnance pods down here, its main laser cannons and the heavy cannon. But it's probably going to serve that well. It's got pretty thick armor. However, it's got an even more crippling weak point compared to the Saber class, in that even though it's only in the rear, it's has a weak point 2 compared to the weak point 1 of the Saber class. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out. Maybe you have a couple of B2 units next to it to make sure that no infantry can get to it, and maybe not. We'll see how things play out for that. And I should mention that Dooku and Rex are becoming in the standard soft plastic that we've known for Legion minis. But now the Phase 2 clones, the B2 battle droids, and the tanks are coming in hard plastic, so you'll have a bit more customizability when it comes to building them. So if you've only played Legion before, I can tell you that building off sprues is a lot more fun just because you get to personalize things a lot more. If you've ever played like Warhammer or something like that, you'll know that feeling already. But if you haven't, just know it's always fun to customize your miniatures like that. So overall, this Legion stuff definitely looks interesting, especially the Phase 2 clones and the B2 Super Battle Droids. Those have always looked really cool to me. But that's not all the Legion news we got, as we had 4 of these upgrade expansions announced a couple of days ago, which these guys, or these packs, they take an existing core unit and just give it extra options. So if we look at the Stormtrooper expansion, you get a Sergeant, a Specialist, and 2 heavy weapons, but you can build them with their standard E11 rifles, and then just field them as a 4-man regular unit of Stormtroopers. Maybe pluck a heavy weapon you're not using from a regular Stormtrooper expansion, and you have a couple of units. And if you don't want to use this, you can just equip them with their Specialist stuff, and you'll have a couple of extra heavy weapon options, a Specialist of some sort, which we're not sure what it's going to do, have a Sergeant for extra leadership, and overall, it seems like this is actually a great concept. Just introduce new options for existing units without having to go to extreme lengths to make sure that people get the minis and the cards. So this is a very effective way to do things. And there's not much to say about the other 3 factions main core units getting these, just because they're all extremely similar. The Rebel Troopers, you're getting multiple different alien races just to diversify your army, since the Rebellion was really that was one of the key things of the Rebellion, is that a lot of alien species joined it due to the xenophobia of the Empire, with some exceptions like Grand Admiral Thrawn. So that's nice to see now, more happening. B1 battle droids, you got a sniper, you have this radiation cannon thing, which looks interesting. You have a security droid that removes the AI attack keyword, which is going to be nice to be able to make sure that if you're trying to like hold an objective or something, you don't have to go and shoot something, and instead you can move towards the objective. Albeit there are only 4 of these guys in here, so unless you like have just random B1s sitting around, like individual B1s sitting around, it's going to be hard to use this unit card, at least from what I understand. And then finally, the clones, you get a couple of heavy weapon options. You get a Sergeant, you get the Specialist, same thing as the other ones, and there's really not too much to say about here compared to other things here. So overall, the new Legion stuff, definitely from an outsider's perspective, looks exciting. How exciting it is to people who actually play, I'm not too sure. But hopefully I find that out if I ever get into the game. So that is all the FFG news I'm going to be covering. So let's go ahead and move over to the Games Workshop stuff that got announced.
Okay, so now looking at the Games Workshop stuff, we start off with the reveals that happened at Gencon. There was only a couple of these, but they're still pretty interesting. Starting off, Aeronautica Imperialis. I'm not sure if this is a returning game or a new game, but it is a hexagonal grid-based air combat game set in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And as somebody who plays X-Wing and has actually made a couple of custom hexagonal grid-based combat games for various things, I'm definitely looking forward to this. This definitely seems like a fun thing, and the models look absolutely amazing, especially these orc bombers that look like A-10 Warthogs, because I love the design of that thing, and just anything that looks like an A-10 Warthog automatically is a win in my book, even if this is, scum. So the Imperial fighters definitely don't look bad. It's just they kind of look a little clunky. They don't look like actual mainline fighters, whereas the orcs kind of do. So yeah, I'm kind of split there. We'll see what happens, and hopefully there's like some Astartes stuff that comes out in the future. But for now, these are definitely interesting things coming out. So moving over to Warhammer Underworld, we finally have a bit more information on the Beastgrave core set. So we know that it's not going to contain Stormcast, which definitely is nice considering that Games Workshop has sort of been pushing Stormcast 8 a lot ever since Age of Sigmar took over. And the warbands we are getting, though, are a Beastman warband and then a Elf warband. So looks like ones that are a bit more connected to nature, even compared to like Wood Elves or something like that, or Wanderers or whatever they're called now. So definitely nice seeing some different stuff in this season starter set. I am kind of hoping, though, that this does mean, like I mentioned in my Age of Sigmar Open Day video, that this means Seraphon are coming into the game, because I've mentioned this. I'm starting to collect a Seraphon army, and hopefully I'll be able to actually use it eventually, but we'll see what happens. And if they release Seraphon in Underworld, it's going to make me really happy. Speaking of Seraphon coming into side games, the Lizardmen are making their return to Blood Bowl, and this is something I've been asking for a while now. I'm a little annoyed it took them this long to get here, but it's finally happened, and I am really looking forward to this, especially since I am a bit of a football fanatic, and I love Lizardmen, so it's kind of a match made in heaven. So maybe I finally have an excuse to play Blood Bowl now. We'll see what happens in the future, but hey, you can't dream, you can't let, or blah, blah. Can I dream, can I? There, I can speak. Anyway, so that was the stuff that was revealed at Gen Con. There was a couple things that were revealed over the weekend, so I'll switch over to that quickly. Okay, so now we have the stuff that was revealed at the Apocalypse Mega Battle over the weekend, and this is all 40k stuff, as somebody would expect, and there's a pretty big amount of news here. So a new Space Marine Codex is being released, which is incorporating the new Vanguard stuff, which I know some people don't like, but honestly, just have your own opinion about it and just don't disrespect anybody else's because of it. So it's nice to see the Marines are getting a new Codex, but this is interesting because it later mentions that it's going to be compatible with every Space Marine chapter except for Deathwatch and Grey Knights, I think. But if you play Dark Angels, Blood Angels, or Space Wolves, like I do play Dark Angels, your current codex is not invalid. You can just download the new rules and new unit data sheets, according to what they said in a later article, which I actually will look at later for something. So if you're a newer player, you're going to want to pick this up, and I'm assuming they're going to release a codex supplement for Blood Angels, Dark Angels, and Space Wolves, because how this codex is working is that you buy the base codex, it comes with all the generic units, and then you buy the supplement for the chapter you're playing, and you get all those unit-specific and chapter-specific rules. So that's honestly a smart way to do things in order to reduce the cost of the baseline codex and just make sure that you don't have access to stuff that you're probably never going to use. So that is definitely a nice way to do things. But again, if you already own one of those current Blood Angels, Dark Angels, or Space Wolves codexes, you will not need to pick up this new one. For current vanilla Marine players, I'm not sure I can say the same thing. Maybe you can get away with just downloading the new rules and using your current codex, but we'll see what happens. And this is especially nice to know for Blood Angels, Dark Angels, and Space Wolves players if you own the limited edition codex, which I am one of those people for the Dark Angels codex. So moving over to new models, we have Primaris versions of Tigurius and Corsaro Khan right now, or coming up. Tigurius, I mean, it's okay. I would have liked to see a bit more of an aggressive pose out of him, like he was marching forward and trying to rip a Tyranid apart with his mind or something, but
the pose that we have isn't too bad, so it at least embodies Tigerius, so that's nice to see. Corsair Khan, though, even though I'm not a White Scars player, this looks absolutely amazing. Just sort of like what's the word I'm looking for here? Fortitude in his stance, the way he's just holding the hawk up, and just everything about him screams, I don't take any crap. Come at me, I will defeat you. And that's something that really all Marines should scream, but Corsair Khan especially screams it. Albeit, hopefully they finally release a model of him on his bike, because a White Scar without a bike is not really a White Scar. So, yeah, that's my opinion on that. And we also have this new Dreadnought style machine. It's not an actual Dreadnought. It's called the Invictor Tactical Warsuit. A lot of people are seeming to absolutely hate this because it, quote, pretty much invalidates the main purpose of a Dreadnought, which is to bring back or to give a fallen Marine a second chance. And to that, I have 2 points. One, if you read this thing, Dreadnoughts have a lot of heavy machinery in it, and they are a lot more armored, so they serve as frontline brawlers or a mobile heavy weapons platform, whereas this is a more lightly armored one with quieter systems designed for heavy scouting. So there are different uses for them. It does not invalidate Dreadnoughts. It just makes sure that Dreadnoughts don't get put into like a scouting role they shouldn't be. And second, you're complaining about this, but you're not complaining about the Dreadnought. I mean, the Dreadnought is basically the same thing. In fact, it's actually more like a Dreadnought, which it's surprising me that people aren't complaining about that, but are about this. And I will admit the roll cage does kind of look a bit wonky, but I'm probably going to lighten up to it just because, I don't know, I tend to lighten up to things after a bit. So, and I will admit the pistolized heavy bolter is kind of wonky looking as well, but I honestly think that makes it even more hilarious, just because we already have a pistolized heavy bolter in the assault bolters that the Interceptors use, but just having an actual pistol heavy bolter is hilarious. And overall, this thing seems pretty decent, and hopefully it serves its sort of backline infiltration role well. Speaking of backline infiltration, eliminators and infiltrators are finally getting their own plastic kit, with the infiltrators having something special we'll discuss in a moment. We have a new Reaver lieutenant that's definitely going to be interesting, and this pose I like a lot more than the one included in Shadow Spear. And we have this new transport called the Impulsor, which only holds 5 or 6 Primaris Marines, but that's honestly not too bad, considering you only need to have 6 spaces for a 3-man Gravis squad or a 5-man unit and a like a lieutenant of some sort. So this will actually be pretty good for Ultramarines players looking to move intercessors up the board, or some like any faction trying to, or like Blood Angels players using this to move Flamestorm or Boltstorm aggressors up the board, or Dark Angels using this to move Hellblasters up the board. There's definitely some uses for it, and it's at least nice that Primaris now have 3 options for transport instead of just one, with the Repulsor being the only one for a while. And then we got the Executioner, which is sort of a transport, and this is a dedicated Primaris transport. So this is finally really nice to see. And then the new Eliminator kit will have that new Las Fusel option that we've been hearing a little bit about, and then the new Infiltrator kit. I am actually going to pull that up in a moment, but it mentions down here the Codex supplements for specific chapters, the new Shock Assault rule. If this unit makes a charge move, is charged, or performs a heroic intervention, add 1 attack. So basically, it just allows them to get a little more out of the early combat and hopefully give them the upper end of things. And yeah, that's nice. A couple more things were revealed. A new Kill Team starter set was revealed with Space Wolves and Tau. And then there's this new Psychic Awakening thing that I'm pretty sure the Eldar has something to do with, but we'll see what happens there. I'm not going to say too much about those because I don't play Kill Team at the moment, and this can be interpreted in like a million different ways. So I'm going to go back to the new Space Marine reveals, and I'm going to quickly cut over to another page to show you something about the Infiltrator kit. Okay, so now we have the new units here, and that Infiltrator kit also can build something called an Incursor Squad, which I'm pretty sure these are going to be elite choices and not troop choices, but we'll see what happens. These are equipped with the Oculus Bolt Carbines that the Vanguard Lieutenant from Shadow Spear had, which is essentially a bolt carbine that removes cover saves. Oh, excuse me there for a moment. And what it does, it has abilities. Again, it has the ability that robs enemies of cover saves. It has a array that prevents them from suffering any sort of negative penalties when using ranged weapons, which means they probably won't have heavy weapons, but we'll see what happens. And they also have the ability to drop these haywire mines, which if you take like a couple of 5-man units of these in impulsors, move them up the board, drop the mines down, and then run them around the flank, could be an interesting thing just to be sure to pinch your opponent or have a way to pinch your opponent in, and then just have some Hellblaster and Intercessor fire in the back to pick off units. So definitely some options with this new haywire mine here. And this is actually where it mentions the impulsor is able to carry 6 Primaris models, 3 if you're running something in Gravis armor, and it also has the assault vehicle keyword, so it allows models to move to jump out after moving, so that is definitely nice. It also has this orbital comms ray, which can be used in place of a shield dome, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and it just makes the impulsor even cooler. Is there anything else interesting? The Invictor Tactical War Suit. Again, a lot of people like this. I'm actually one of the few that does. But it can actually use its heavy bolter within 1 inch of enemy units. And again, it looks wonky if you holster it, or if you put it in its fist like they said you can and showed with this picture. But honestly, it just makes it look even more hilarious to me, which I think is a good thing. So, but that's just my opinion. So that's really everything that happened in the last few weeks for the different games that I pay attention to the news for. Hopefully you enjoyed me rambling on about this. And just so you know, there's actually a battle report that I am editing right now. So hopefully that comes within the next week or so. And yeah, again, hopefully you enjoy what you saw here today. And just stay tuned for more stuff coming out. Peace out.